You're not crazy. Everything is getting more expensive. Your money doesn't go as far as it used to, and for a lot of people, life has simply become unaffordable. But this isn't just inflation, and it's not happening by accident. Welcome to the Quiet Republic. To truly understand why life has become unaffordable today, you have to go back. Not to COVID, not to the 2008 financial crisis, and not even to the Iraq War in 2003. You have to go all the way back to the 1980s, to the rise of what we now call Reaganomics. The principle was simple. Government is inefficient, and boy is it. Markets, however, are very efficient. So instead of the government directly providing services, they should outsource those services. So private companies stepped in as a layer between you and healthcare. You don't pay a doctor. You pay an insurance company to negotiate with a hospital who bills through a network, a layer between you and that system. You don't buy food directly from a farmer. You buy it from a grocery store that buys it from a distributor who buys it from the processors that buy it from those farms. And at every step in that chain, there's a cut taken. These type of corporate layers weren't just added for food and healthcare though. That would be bad enough. No. At every level, every facet of life, our defense, our infrastructure, and basic services, there is an unelected corporate layer woven into everyday American life. And none of these layers, these companies, removes costs for us. Every single one has margin because they have a bottom line. And over time, that compounds. So instead of a straight line, we get a chain. And every link in that chain is designed for profit. The promise was efficiency, and efficiency was delivered. They've been efficiently hollowing out the middle class and working class people for the past 40 years. Because once you introduce profit incentives into things people need to survive and thrive, you don't get efficiency. You get extraction. The next piece in explaining why life is simply unaffordable for most of us, we have to go back even further, past the 1980s, and not even to the Cold War at its height, but we have to come to right after World War II. So by the 1950s, the United States had built something new, a permanent defense industry. This had never existed before to this level. The companies that produced weapons during the war, they didn't disappear when the war ended. They became an industry all their own. And that industry needed contracts. So war didn't become something the country fought. It became something the economy could depend on. Korea, Vietnam, and the decades that followed. War didn't just cost money anymore, it generated money. And in 1961, a man who had seen war firsthand, President Dwight D. Eisenhower gave a warning. In his farewell address, he spoke the following words, which ring true, only truer as time passes. We must guard, he said, against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military industrial complex. He wasn't talking about an enemy overseas, not about an enemy abroad, but about a system that was forming back at home. He warned that a growing alliance between the military and private industry would gain too much influence over the government itself. A system where public money flows into private hands through defense contracts, through long-term conflicts, through policy. And that system, it didn't disappear, it expanded. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, 2 decades of sustained military spending, all under pretenses that the government now admits were never real. Weapons of mass destruction, they never had them. Manufactured outrage, manufactured support, manufactured reasons for fueling the war machine. Trillions of dollars funded by taxpayers, flowing through private contractors, weapons manufacturers, logistics companies, energy interests, and every single layer takes a cut. A system established that siphoned off the wealth of taxpayers, the working class, everyday Americans, and transferred it to entrenched power and special interests. These war pigs have been playing the system at the extreme loss of human life for the last 75 years, and you and I, we've been footing the bill for it. Now, we need to fast forward from the 1950s back to 2008. Right on the back of hope and change, the financial system breaks. An implosion caused by banks who had spent years making risky bets, bundling mortgages, trading them, leveraging them, building a system that looked stable but wasn't. When it collapsed, it didn't just hit Wall Street, it hurt everyone. Thousands of people lost homes, jobs disappeared, savings, retirement accounts wiped out. And for a moment, it looked like the system might completely fail. But the government stepped in, not to rebuild though, but to stabilize what had already existed. The banks were bailed out, trillions of dollars injected into the system. And why? Because they were considered too big to fail. Never forget this. The government doesn't have money. Every time the government spends, that's tax dollars. So taxes gathered from the working class is allocated to save corporations and banks. We're advised as individuals and households to have 3 to 6 months of savings to be responsible with our finances, while many of us are barely scraping by. And when individuals fail, they absorb the loss. But when institutions fail, the public absorbs it time and time again. The standard is different. We, ordinary people, subsidize banks and corporations through our tax dollars. And this right here is the pattern: a system where risk is taken privately but stabilized publicly, where losses are shared but gains concentrated in the hands of a few, and every layer takes their cut. And that moment back in 2008 matters because it set a precedent. When the system is under pressure, it doesn't reset, it gets reinforced. The structure stays intact, the layers remain, and the costs, they trickle down. Who am I kidding? It's a deluge. And then everything hits at once. COVID. In March of 2020, the world shuts down. Supply chains break, production slows, entire industries pause overnight. And at the same time, the government once again injects massive amounts of money into the economy. This takes many forms. It takes the form of stimulus checks, relief programs for working class people stuck at home. Good stuff, right? It's also corporate support, subsidizing those same corporations and interests from 2008 that still haven't learned to put back some in savings. At first, it kind of works, but underneath, pressure is building and cracks are appearing because now you have less supply, more money, and a system that already is built on layers of moneyed interest. So prices begin to rise, first slowly, then all at once. And we call it inflation. But inflation isn't the cause, it's the result. Because we have a system that has become reliant on continued extraction, on the shaky soil of self interest and capital, and ever widening profits. Every disruption multiplied, supply chains break. And how can these companies make up the bottom line difference? Every link of the chain raises prices. Costs increase across the board. Every layer protects its margin. And those increases, they don't happen once. They stack one on top of another right onto our backs. Then comes another shock: a war in Ukraine, a proxy war between the US and Russia. After decades of expanding NATO territory, a US backed Ukraine responds to Russia's illegal invasion. There are no good guys here, only a war machine turning the wheel again, and a population caught in the meat grinder of global power. Energy markets tighten, oil and gas prices surge, and energy is the foundation of everything: transportation, manufacturing, food production. So when energy prices rise, everything becomes more expensive. That surge in energy costs was a major driver of the inflation spike after 2021. And now it's happening again. Our current illegal war with Iran is already pushing oil prices sharply higher. Disruptions are happening to global supply, and fuel costs are only rising fast. And when oil spikes, it doesn't stay in one place. It moves through the entire economy. Fuel costs rise, shipping costs rise, food costs rise. Basic goods are affected because so much of the global system runs on energy. And so this isn't a single event, it's a pattern. A system that was already stretched gets hit shock after shock: pandemic, war, energy crisis. And each time, the response is the same: prices go up and they don't ever fully come down again. Because at the end of the day, you're not paying for goods. You're paying for the supply chain, the logistics, the layers. So when you ask, why is everything so expensive? Why is life unaffordable? It's not just inflation. It's that we've spent decades building an economy where the price of everything includes layers of extraction. And those layers, they don't go away. They only grow. Because when the system is stressed, you're the one who pays to keep it standing. If you want to understand the world we're living in today, you have to stop looking at events in isolation and start seeing the systems underneath them. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is the Quiet Republic.